want to talk a little bit about music today. Speaking of music, I have a question for you. If you wanted to find the best song in the world, how would you find it? And I suppose the best song in the world is a bit subjective, and different people have different tastes. But if you wanted to find the best song, maybe a reasonable place to start would to look at what's popular. What are people actually listening to? So I went ahead and I looked at YouTube. As it turns out, there's like a leaderboard of all the most popular and most viewed videos out there. And number one on the list, with 12 billion views, is the song Baby Shark. Baby Shark, do, 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 do. Right? And if you don't know it, that's okay. You're probably not missing out. But my kids love it. Just a lot of people do not like that song. True story. There was a prison in Oklahoma State, and the jailers decided to kind of get at the inmates by playing them Baby Shark. So they played the song loud and on loop, and it drove the inmates crazy. Like in the words of one inmate, after the third repeat, I wanted to scream. That's what he said. And the inmates were so upset at Baby Shark that they actually sued the prison guards, and the guards found them guilty of using that song as a means of torture. So that's it's officially torture, Baby Shark. I don't know why people do this to themselves, but 12 billion views. Let's just not call that the greatest song in the world. Let's skip down. Let's go down the leaderboard. The next greatest song, next most popular song of all time is Despacito, which I don't really understand the words, but apparently it's a love song. And if we skip down to because there's a couple of children's songs down the list, there's like the bath song, which is actually kind of nice. Like, I jump in the bathtub, it's time to get all clean, that's good for the kids. But the next song for adults is Ed Sheeran, The Shape of You. And as we go down the list of like the top 10 songs for adults, we find that 6 of the 10 are about love, which probably will not come as a huge surprise to you, because if you just turn on the radio to a random radio station, people are singing about love. You know, they're singing about how happy they are that they found love, or how miserable that they are that it didn't work out. But either way, they're talking about love. It's always been that way, right? I've grown up with stuff like the Backstreet Boys, and like Beyonce was like just getting started at that time when I was growing up, and they were always singing about this stuff. We've heard these songs ever since we were little. But I think that all these songs, they give us ideas on what love looks like, but I don't think they've actually prepared us for love in real life. I look around the friends my age, and I think that most of us have huge regrets, serious regrets about our love life. I don't think these songs have really cut it for us. But what if there is a better song? What if there's a song that's so great that it will actually give us the right ideas about romance? That will help young people to find the one. That will help long-time couples to sustain the romance, keep it alive. What if it will even help singles, people who are not going to be in a relationship long-term, to find love in their own context? I believe there is such a song, and that song is in the Bible. So for the next few sermons, we're going to be studying the Song of Songs, which is in the middle of the Bible, and it's going to be fun. It's a love story, it's a drama, and it teaches us a lot about this topic of love. Helps us answer one of the deepest questions of life. And so my big question today is, how can we have a great love life? And my answer that I've learned from the Song of Songs is we need to take initiative. So I have 2 points to make today. First, we need to choose love. And second, we need to face the obstacles. So my task today is to show you these ideas straight from the Bible. So let's turn to Song of Songs, chapter 1, verse 1. I'll be reading today from the ESV Bible, which is a technical Bible, as opposed to our normal NIV, which is a more easy reading Bible. It goes like this. The Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. So this is the title of the book. The title is the Song of Songs. And Song of Songs is the Hebrew's way of saying, this is the greatest song. This song is good. Like, brace yourself because it's going to knock your socks off. This song is so good. And it has something to do with Solomon, as we'll see. All right, the next verse, well, we get introduced to our main character, which happens to be a young woman. And she says, "Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is better than wine. Your anointing oils are fragrant. Your name is oil poured out, therefore virgins love you." And so we have a young woman, and she's thinking about her boyfriend, and she wants to be kissed because his love is so sweet and so intoxicating, it's better than wine. And everybody knows this. Every time people mention his name, they're like, yeah, that guy. All the girls love him, but he's chosen her. The only thing is that it's a little bit complicated kissing this guy because he's actually not around. Because he's actually out in the field somewhere, because as we learn, as we read on, that he's a shepherd out in the field. And she doesn't know where he is, but she misses him. She wants him, especially in this moment. So typical love song stuff, right? Well, here's where it gets really interesting. Verse 4. She says, "Draw me after you. Let's run. The king has brought me into his chambers. We'll exalt and rejoice in you. We'll extol your love more than wine. Rightly do they love you." So she's saying to him, let's get out of here. Let's go. We need to go right now. Because King Solomon has me in his bedroom. Dun, dun, dun. Plot twists. So there's like 3 guys in this story, and she doesn't want to be with King Solomon. Now, the reason why we chose ESV today, because if you read it in the NIV, it actually makes it sound like the woman actually wants to be in bed with Solomon, which is completely missing the point. NIV, in this case, has translated in a very non-standard way. So we'll keep using NIV in other weeks. I love NIV, but this week, the ESV that we're using today has really brought out the sense of the original Hebrew. And the original sense is that there is a love triangle here. The woman loves the shepherd boy. The shepherd loves a young woman. But Solomon has the young woman in his bedroom. And with all the intentions that you would expect, he wants to sleep with her. Which actually is not the worst thing in the world. Because we know a lot about Solomon from other parts of the Bible. If Solomon sleeps with this girl, he's the kind of guy who would actually marry her. And Solomon is actually the kind of guy that, most girls, they talk about the list sometimes of what they're looking for a guy. I think he would check off the boxes in most girls' lists, Like, here's a guy who was cultured and successful. He was smart. He was fabulously wealthy. He went to church. He's actually a leader at church. He actually had experiences with God where God actually appeared to him on 2 different occasions and made him promises. Like, who can claim that? This guy was really impressive. Solomon actually might have been the most attractive man in the whole country. And yet, there is a string attached. There is something wrong with him. Because, plot twist, he's already married. And in fact, he's not just married to one girl, but there's a lot of women in his life. Now, to be fair, people back then in that culture, it was normal for one man to marry more than one wife. But that wasn't quite the problem. If they could support the wife, that is, and Solomon clearly had the money to support as many wives as he wanted. The problem was that if he had that many women in his life, there was no way he would love her. He was just a man who collected women for fun, like a rich person might collect cars nowadays. So he would never love her. He could offer luxury, but not love. And so our young woman makes her choice. She chooses the shepherd, this guy who lives out in the middle of nowhere in a tent. We might call him a homeless man. You know, he's probably very poor. He's probably just scraping by, but he has one thing. He loves her. And to this young woman, that love is worth more than all the money in the world. And that's how our story starts. Isn't that great? It's so good. It's better than Hollywood. I actually think it's better than Hollywood because I remember watching Star Wars Episode 7. I'm like, really? They want to blow up the Death Star again? For the third time in 7 movies. I was so disappointed. Loved the visuals, hated the plot. Whereas this story has no visuals, but the plot jumps off the page at us. Because as it turns out, it's not just some random story some love story between 2 imaginary characters. No, it's better than that. It's a story about us. We are the young woman. I am a young woman. No, but kidding aside, we're supposed to identify with her. We're supposed to identify with her and say, yeah, we have this same choice. We have this choice to pursue wealth and comfort and luxury, or we could go after a love that's more precious than all the money in the world. And that choice is available to us. For some of us, it's for a short time. And if we do not choose, the choice will be made for us. And I believe that this choice is available for us all. And that if we wanted to choose this love, we could have it. Every one of us. It's just not in the place that you might expect. In our premarital counseling course, Pauline and I like to bring up the story of King Edward VIII. So King Edward was the uncle of our beloved Queen Elizabeth II, and he reigned in 1936. Reigned for only 1 year, actually a little bit under 1 year. And the reason why he was king for only less than 1 year was because he was in love. He had met the love of his life. But the only problem was that the love of his life, this woman, was completely incompatible with his job as king. And so he had to make a really difficult decision. He decided to step down from his throne. And the media went crazy over this because this was like the love story of the century. Can you imagine how romantic this sounded? That the king of the British Empire, would step down from his throne to marry the love of his life. It's awesome. And suddenly this guy, he used to be king, he had a job, suddenly he had no job, which is okay because he's fabulously wealthy. And he had connections, and he had all the freedom in the world, and now time to spend with the love of his life, and all he had to do was to live happily ever after. And they did stay together for the rest of their lives, but I wouldn't call it a happy marriage. As time went on, she found that she couldn't bear the weight of his expectations. In her words, how could a woman be a kingdom to a man? And he couldn't fulfill her expectations either. And the two were just disappointed in each other. And as they got older, they would just sit across the table from each other in the evenings, just drinking wine, looking at each other in silence because they had nothing to talk about. And if that's what love is like, I don't think I'm really interested. But what if Edward missed something? What if there's a love out there that's actually better than that? A love that is powerful and transcendent. There's a popular wedding song inspired by the Twilight series. It says, it's 1,000 years. Has this line, I have loved you for 1,000 years and I'll love you for 1,000 more. Very romantic. But Tim Keller used to poke fun at that song and say, there's not a single person in the world that can claim to have loved you for 1,000 years. That's crazy. Nobody can say that they've loved you for 1,000 years. Nobody except for God. But the thing is, if God is in the picture, then actually we can experience this love in our human interactions. And actually the best marriages are built around this kind of love, where every day, in our everyday tasks, we are bringing forth this love of God that He's had for us from the creation of the world. We get to give this love to each other. We get to receive this love from each other, this love that is timeless and perfect and powerful and sweet. This is the love that we wanted. This is the love that's more priceless than all the money in the world. And if you're looking for this love, as it turns out, you actually don't have to be married for it. But even if you're single, you can search out this love of God, this giving and receiving of the love of God in your other relationships, in your friendships, in your family, and in your church. You can build friendships and deep relationships where they can be places of vulnerability and sharing and deep affection. You can experience the love of God Himself in this way. And if you do that, you will find that this is the greatest thing that you could do with your love, to give and to receive the love of God. But that said, it's one thing to make that choice. It's an important choice to make, but that's not all we have to do. It's just one thing to choose with our minds. We actually have to also choose with our actions as well. Which leads me to my second point, which is that we need to face the obstacles. As it turns out in our Bible story, our young woman had quite a few obstacles in her life. Let's turn to the next verse. She says, "I am very dark, but lovely, O daughters of Jerusalem, like the tents of Kedar, like the curtains of Solomon. Do not gaze at me because I am dark, because the sun has looked upon me. My mother's sons were angry with me. They made me keeper of the vineyards, but my own vineyard I have not kept." So here is a woman with a serious tan, like she's seriously sunburned, because she spent way too much time in the sun. In the original language, it says that her skin has literally turned black from the sun. And because of that, and maybe she has like peeling skin and stuff like that, she doesn't want people to look at her. She says she says, "Do not gaze at me." She has a body image issue. But beyond her body image issue is an even bigger problem, which is she has some really toxic family dynamics. See, it was her brothers who would send her outside to work those long hours in the vineyard, to work so that she was making money for them at a great expense, at a serious expense to her own body. And men back then were actually allowed to do that. If the father was not away, the brothers would actually be the owners of the house, and they would be able to tell their sister what to do. They had the authority to do that, and these brothers had abused their authority. But what's more, these brothers were actually the very reason why this woman ended up in Solomon's bedroom in the first place, even though she didn't want to be there. Because you have to understand, marriage back then was a deal between men. If a man wanted to get married to a woman, he would talk to a man. He would talk to the woman's father or her older brothers. And they would sit down at the negotiating table, and they would speak for the woman. And she would just have to go along with whatever they said. Now, if the family was kind, they would give the woman some say in the matter. But in this case, the brothers were not kind. And so you can imagine these brothers sitting across the table from King Solomon, the richest man in the world, and negotiating with him. Can you imagine how much money that Solomon would have paid for this beautiful woman? And so you can see the glee, the delight of these brothers as they realize that they just hit the jackpot. They were rich. And you can imagine the absolute heartbreak of this woman as she realizes she's been sold by her brothers. And the thing is that nobody in that culture really would have objected to what the brothers did, because as the culture understood it, the brothers had just fulfilled their responsibility. They had married their sister to a great household, a wealthy, stable household. What could be better than that? So this woman wasn't going to get help from the culture. Like, it wouldn't have made sense if she said to them, I have a boyfriend living out in the country somewhere. He actually loves me. Nobody would have listened to her. But our young woman did not give up on love. And so you can imagine her in Solomon's bedroom, pacing around, wondering if there's some way out of this mess. Anxious that at any moment Solomon might come in and consummate this marriage. She decides to keep searching for a way. Verse 7, tell me, you who my soul loves, where you pasture your flock, where you make it lie down at noon. For why should I be like one who veils herself beside the flocks of your companions? In verse 8, somebody says to her, I prefer to think that maybe she's saying this to herself. If you do not know, O most beautiful among women, follow in the tracks of the flock and pasture your young goats around the shepherd's tents. And so, here's her plan. She's going to look for a way to escape. She's going to run into the country, follow the tracks of the sheep. And probably it's not going to be the shepherd she's looking for. Probably whatever shepherd that she finds is going to think that she's a veiled woman, which is just a Hebrew term for a prostitute. Because why else would a pretty girl go out and visit them? And yet, for her, it was worth the risk. It was worth going out there and risk being humiliated. Going out into the unknown, because she would rather have that than marry Solomon. And as we read on in the book, we find her overcoming her obstacles. Her obstacle of a poor body image, her toxic relationships, her culture that went against her, her fear of humiliation and the unknown. And she finds the one. She finds the one she loves, and at the end of the book, she runs off with him. Isn't that great? Love it. Love this story. But what makes it better is that it's a story again about us. Because who of us doesn't have problems like this with our love life? Who doesn't have body image issues? Don't raise your hand, you'll just make us jealous. I have body image issues. Like, I wish I had big muscles. Like, I'm not that I'm going to work for them, but like, every time I play like video games, I like to play the big buff dude because at least he has muscles. Right? But muscles aside and body image aside, we all have problems. You know, some of us have to deal with toxic relationships. Others have to deal with this cultural burden that we feel every day. Others have to deal with our fear of humiliation or the fear of the unknown. And this story is here to say it's worth it. You can do it. There is a solution. You can find love. It's out there for you. We know it. We know it because this love is found in God himself. And Jesus said to us in John chapter 6, whoever comes to me, I will not shoo them away. So we set our hearts on love because we have a good God. I'll conclude by summarizing everything I've said, and then I'll pray for us. So our big question today is, how can we have a great love life? And the answer that we learn from our story is that we need to take initiative, like our young women. We need to choose love over all the treasure in the world. This love that is precious, the love that actually seems to come from God himself, this giving and receiving of love that comes from our relationships, whether in marriage or in friendship. And after we have chosen this love, we have to face the many obstacles, and it will be hard. It will be troublesome and difficult, maybe even humiliating, but it'll be worth it. Love is leading you to God himself, and he himself will satisfy your soul. Let's pray to close. God, who knew it was you all along? You were the one who loved us more than anybody else. You were the one that we needed. Help us to find you in our human relationships, to give and receive your love. Make this story come alive in our life. In Jesus' name, amen.